it started to dawn on me that I was actually really tired of trying to be better, that all the things I were doing, all the things I was doing they weren't necessarily making me stronger. I think in some ways they're weak. There was a lot of dependency on external input, and what I call the paraphernalia of the New Age. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just, wasn't hard to see this. Wasn't just me that was feeling that way. It was really me and all my girlfriends. And then every time I get off stage, the women would come up to me. I'd hear the same things. And basically, we're really tired. And this is not the point. Further fatigue and berating yourself and self-criticism. I'm pretty sure this is not the point of walking the spiritual path.
I'm Srini Rao, and this is the Unmistakable Creative Podcast, where you get a window into the stories and insights of the most innovative and creative minds who've started movements, built thriving businesses, written best-selling books, and created insanely interesting art. For more, check out our 500-episode archive at unmistakablecreative.com. Before we start, I just want to share two quick things with you. If you have guest recommendations or stories that you think we should know about, shoot us an email at hello@unmistakablemedia.com. We love hearing from our listeners. And if you're looking for a keynote speaker for your event or want to bring our team at Unmistakable Creative to your event or organization for a workshop on creativity and productivity, visit unmistakablecreative.com/speaking, send us the details, and we'll be in touch. And as always, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at HostGator. Whether you're looking to start a new website or move an existing one, HostGator can help. They have 24/7 live support via phone, chat, and email, an easy-to-use website builder if you're not too tech-savvy, and if you want to move from an existing host to HostGator, they make it free and super simple. So visit HostGator.com/creative and use the promo code creative at checkout for 30% off. Danielle, welcome back to the Unmistakable Creative. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
I'm so happy to be here. 4th time. So I feel like I'm moving into legacy mode with you guys.
You really are moving into legacy mode. It's funny because we've had you 4 times. Not only that, the last time we had you here was when we officially changed the name to Unmistakable Creative. And it was very fitting since the title of the interview was starting a new chapter in life and business. But I want to start this conversation with you a bit differently than I have in the past and ask you a question that I have found has been very interesting, fun, and revealing. And that is, what social group were you a part of when you were in high school, and what impact has that had on the choices that you've made with your life and your career?
Oh, great question. This is so good. I was a bridge in high school. I was in between. I walked in 2 worlds. So I had one foot very much in the cool girl, the popular girl clique. And, those were the it girls. And then I had one foot in the artistic, broody, fringe kids. And I kind of went in between both of them. And this is a great question because I actually asked this in the book club that's a part of my next book, of who was your tribe back then? Who are they now? Is it what you want it to be? So to answer the second part of your question, how is that what is it? How does that affect my life? Is that the second part?
Yeah. How has it impacted the choices that you've made throughout your life?
I'm always watching. My antennae are always up to figure out who feels the way they're feeling. And this is part of my upbringing as well. And you develop certain skills to survive and to thrive. And it's made me curious in everybody's story. You never know. You never know who you're sitting next to. And it's made me, I have a much more malleable is not the right word. I have a very broad definition of power. So it isn't, for me, it's not about status. I mean, I'm really interested in people who feel powerful within themselves. And I think that started in high school. Yeah. Great first question. Thanks. This is going to be good.
Oh, it always is. I mean, you and I always have the most riveting conversations. So I had to ask about your upbringing since you mentioned it, and I am curious, what it was like for you to end up, sort of with this perspective on life that you have. I mean, were you raised basically doing nothing but reading self-help books and being exposed to all of this stuff?
Yeah,
And I'm just
absolutely.
curious, what your parents were like.
Well, was really defining for me that my parents were really young. So my parents had the classic shotgun wedding. My mom got knocked up in high school. So, my mom had just turned 19 when she had me. And that made a huge difference in how I was raised because I went everywhere with my parents. I was like exposed to a lot of stuff, probably that I shouldn't have been exposed to. But, plus it was like, it's the 70s, right? There's lots of weed, there's lots of house parties, there's lots of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Cranked. And all that was like really good. And that's interesting too. See, now you've got me really getting therapeutic thinking about this high school thing because I was having lots of conversations with adults when I was a kid and really going in between worlds. Like, it's like I'm 10 and I'm 40 all at the same time. And also, my parents split up a lot. They were not a match made in heaven. It was not, there's a lot of stability. There was no violence in my household or addiction, but we were always waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's fair to say. So it made me I had to know what the mood was in the house that day. If this was a day that everybody was staying together or if we were getting ready to move. Yeah.
So you mentioned this idea of being a bridge, and it's interesting because this seems like an ongoing theme throughout your life. And the reason I say that is that to me, I think one of the very interesting paradoxes of your life and your career is I know that you started out working at a think tank in Washington, D.C., and then you've got this incredibly spiritual side to the work that you do, which has always been one of the things I found most, interesting about you, because it's this really interesting blend of this incredibly spiritual side that seems at moments new agey, but this also very practical side that allows you to accomplish extraordinary things. And I am curious, how people build that kind of a bridge in their own life or find the balance between those two things.
Yeah, I'm curious too. This really is everything I'm about right now, or maybe I've been about that for a long time and just getting more intense. I want a spirituality that works in my life, where I can find peace in the mundane, where I can find the divine in the everyday, where I don't feel guilty. Like there is no guilt in my pleasures for, spiritual reasons. So if I want to have a cigarette and a smoothie in the same day, I can do that. If I want to talk about meditation and mascara in the same conversation with my friends, which is what happens on a regular basis, like super esoteric stuff. And then, I found these great jeans, these are the best ass jeans ever, and that's real life. That's real life for me. So that's my definition of whole. Everyday and esoteric. Think tank and spirituality. Well, this is part of the learning of being in Washington, D.C. and helping to run that think tank at the time was I couldn't be completely out and have fluid conversations about what I was really interested in. And I felt like a big fraud. Like I had a raging imposter complex when I was doing my thing. I was wearing black suits and I was wearing loafers and I had this really severe bob haircut. And I had to act interested in things I wasn't necessarily interested in. But underneath that, through all that, I never, my commitment to be of service to the world was unwavering. And I just thought that was the route to do it. And that was a really logical thinking. Let's do deep research and do scenario planning on the potential trends that might collide around AIDS in Africa and weapons of mass destruction and water wars and, big global topics. And someone needs to do that. someone really, really needs to do that. Scenario planning can be such a brilliant force for how we make change, but it's not me. That's not where I want to be. I want to be. I'm in those two worlds again. I'm like really in the pop culture space and seeing. I love really trying to figure out like what of the human psyche collectively is playing out in pop music and entertainment. And I was just having this conversation yesterday with somebody about all the damn zombie shows that are everywhere. I'm like, this is a reflection, consciously portrayed or not, of where we are at. That same vibration that you're getting in zombie shows, you can see in the mall, in the middle of any country. Yeah, that's right. That was a tangent on zombies and consciousness. But where were we?
Join a nation where pride collides with opportunity. The UK's supercharged tech economy enjoys record levels of investment, home to talent from across the globe. As we decarbonise industries, expand deep tech hubs, and work with cutting-edge health tech, your talent can help build a future we all want to live in. Whether you're an experienced coder or a product management expert, live, learn, and lead in UK tech today. Apply now to the Tech Nation visa.
If you're like most people, you probably have thousands of photos on your smartphone. With cameras like the ones in our pockets, everyone is a photographer. Maybe you're already a pro, or you're thinking about turning your hobby into a business. Or maybe you're like my friends who send me Christmas cards with pictures of their family every year, which is something I guess only married people seem to do. No matter your genre or your plans for your photos, make Zenfolio the place to present your portfolio and find new clients. Anybody can create a gorgeous photography website in minutes with their easy no-code drag-and-drop templates to showcase their photos and style. They make it easy to sell prints, cards, canvases, and more to your clients around the world. And they manage and track shipping, and you get paid directly. Get started for free today at zenfolio.com/unmistakable. Again, that's zenfolio.com/unmistakable. We were talking about the balance between the two, but I think you answered my question.
Yeah.
The imposter complex, I have a feeling that every one of us feels that to some degree. I still have moments when I feel it. And I'm curious what that period of your life taught you about human behavior and relationships and communication with people, which I realize is like a landmine of a question.
Yeah.
But you should be used to that by now.
Everybody is faking it. That was one thing I learned. Or so many of us are faking it. Because so first of all, you're in Washington, D.C., so there's a very predominant bought into definition of what power is, political power, the power to lobby. There's a lot of nationalistic bravado. It's very much a patriarchal mindset. I mean, there's not even an argument to be had there. So there's a lot happening there. And what I learned was when you really got to know somebody, they're just as scared, insecure, just as hungry for love. Their capacity for compassion is huge. Everybody's just as wounded for one reason or another. Working with. So I learned the dark side, like we're all scared, and I learned the light side. There are some really big-hearted people in positions of power. And I really felt like, I had my attitude reconfigured when, I came into contact with a lot of high-level military folk. And I had some pretty severe judgments going in to those situations. And I met a lot of men in uniform who were really there for what I would consider peaceful reasons. I mean, they really wanted to keep the peace in their country. They really wanted to protect people's civil liberties. They were really good fathers. A lot of them, surprisingly, were vegetarian. I mean, it really knocked the judgment out of me. And I think when you have an experience like that, you realize how entrenched you've been in your own judgment. You're never the same after that. You look at everybody differently, not just dudes in uniform.
Well, let's get into sort of the ideas from the book and the core. I'm curious, what prompted this inquiry in this book, and what planted the seeds for these ideas.
Well, without sounding dramatic, this book is my life. I mean, really, this is every silly, awesome, successful failure, addictive behavior, divine reaching I've ever done to be a better person. I mean, in writing this, I had to recapitulate, oh my God, how many workshops did I go to? How many, I just eat self-help books for breakfast, and how many astrology readings have I had? And the turning point where it became, in my opinion, useful content for someone other than myself, was when it started to dawn on me that I was actually really tired of trying to be better. That all the things I were doing, all the things I was doing they weren't necessarily making me stronger. I think in some ways there was a lot of dependency on external input, and what I call the paraphernalia of the New Age. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just, wasn't hard to see this. Wasn't just me that was feeling that way. It was really me and all my girlfriends. And then every time I get off stage, the women would come up to me. I'd hear the same things. And basically, we're really tired. And this is not the point. Further fatigue and berating yourself and self-criticism. I'm pretty sure this is not the point of walking the spiritual path.
Yeah. One of the things that really came to my mind as I knew we were going to be having this conversation is that it seems, that a lot of people come to you. I mean, a lot of people who come and listen to the Unmistakable Creative are seeking answers to questions that they have. And part of what I started to wonder is there a point where you actually have all the answers, or is this just a lifelong quest? I couldn't help but wonder that. I thought, is there a point where you stop finally searching for answers?
It's a great question. I don't think I will ever stop searching for answers, but where I look has changed. So I'm going to be constantly in this lifetime and lifetimes and dimensions beyond this, looking for the answers, for what resonates, what feels true for me, what I can see as light and dark and right and wrong. Always, always, I will constantly be measuring. But I don't need anybody else to validate my truth anymore. I don't think I know there is nobody other than me who knows what's best for me, period, full stop. Am I interested in what masters have to say? Absolutely. Do I still have a voracious appetite for all things esoteric? More than ever. But I only proceed with new information and a new thing and a new methodology if it resonates with me. I am no longer trying to please this cosmic council. Certainly will never try and please a guru or a teacher. And it doesn't mean I don't have really deeply reverent relationships with spiritual teachers. I do. Just not as many of them. And I've got much better at being able to discern who is the real deal and who isn't. But I think the search is eternal, and the more you learn, the more you realize, the less you know. And it's beautiful. God, it's so beautiful.
In that search, how do you let go of the need for validation?
Well, it's not easy. So first of all, you have to know, it's an addiction. It's a deep psychological addiction that the majority of humans have to some degree or another. So you can be like, oh, I don't need my mom or dad's approval anymore. Awesome, great. You do not. You have moved on from that. Then you're just like, oh, maybe I just need my lover's approval. Maybe the person I'm going to make, well, actually, you don't. Maybe I just need the approval of the Lord, of the cosmos, of my yoga teacher, of my favorite philosopher. Actually, no. So it's a no for everybody. And part of being human and relating and giving love and receiving love is, of course, to some degree, you want people's approval. Of course, we want to make people feel good. Of course, we want to extend comfort, and we want to do what we can to create harmony. And sometimes we do it for healthy reasons, sometimes unhealthy reasons. And sometimes we achieve that simpatico, and sometimes we really fuck up and wound other people. Yeah. So specifically, how do you do it? It's difficult to do. Mm-hmm. You will definitely go through withdrawals. You will feel lost. Guaranteed. You will feel lost. You will feel like you cannot hear that still small inner voice that you're supposed to hear, that every New Age book has told you should hear and listen to. And then you're going to hear something. You're going to make a decision, and you're not going to refer to or defer to anybody else. And you're going to think, okay, I'm going to make this decision on my own. And you're going to be worried about making the right decision, sweaty palms. It's going to turn out okay. And then there's going to be another choice to be made, whether it's take the job or what to eat or what time you're going to leave work. It's like the big stuff, the basic stuff. And you're going to know. You're going to know in your body. You're going to feel a sense of lightness. And you're building your strength for hearing yourself. And my experience of this, of learning to much more so be my own guru and refer to me, is that things aren't as much of a big deal as I used to think they were in terms of right or wrong. I used to get so much input into what decisions I should make with my business and my creativity and relationships. And I was hoping the psychic would tell me the when and the how and where, the best place to put myself. And when I let so much of that go, I mean, a lot of that is still in my life, but when I let a vast amount of it go, I realized, I'm going to learn what I need to learn. Whether I start this division of a company or I don't. Whether I hire this person or I don't. Doesn't, my karma is my karma. I'm going to learn one way or another. And there's infinite awesome possibilities. It turns out for me that, reality creating is way more fluid than I thought it was when I was looking for someone to tell me to go left or go right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So on that subject of validation, I mean, having, done many of the things that you've done, accomplished many of the things you've accomplished, books, this amazing business. And there have been moments ever when the external accolades or accomplishments felt empty or didn't live up to, what you thought they would do for you?
Well, they never feel empty and they never don't live up. I mean, I've never thought, well, you didn't say I was super awesome, I think there's been times, I have noticed that I've numbed out at times where you get off stage and there's hundreds now of women who wait to get a hug and say hi and get their book signed. And they say really lovely things. And I noticed I don't deflect it. I'm really open to it because deflecting doesn't do anybody good. That's disrespectful. And I just really thought, sometimes when I go back to my hotel room, wow, Danielle, you need to take some of that in and feel the fulfillment that can come from that kind of gratitude. Because there's been lots of gigs and events where I'm just I take this kind of spiritual high road where I'm like, hey, I have nothing to do with you growing. It's really all you, sister. Thanks, but you're on the path. I'm glad you read my book. God bless. And that's true too. I think that's actually really healthy detachment. But I have to talk to myself sometimes and just say, Dee, why don't you just take it in and feel really good about that book you wrote, and what you're doing matters to some people. And that's healthy too. So both, you need both.
Instead of spending your day in back-to-back meetings, try a new kind of FaceTime with Loom. You can use Loom to get a quick recording of your screen and webcam explaining what the team needs to know. It uploads while you record, so it's ready to share as soon as you are done. Just copy the link and paste it in Slack, Teams, or an email, and get back to work. A 3-minute video just might replace your next 30-minute meeting. Visit Loom.com to try Loom for free. That's Loom.com to try Loom for free today. Loom. See you at work.
Hey, it's Srini, and I wanted to let you know about a special live event that we have coming up. This Thursday at 1 Mountain Standard Time, we'll be hosting our first ever live interview with former Unmistakable creative guest Danielle Laporte. It's your opportunity to be a fly on the wall during one of our interviews, and at the end, we'll open it up to questions. In the unlikely event that you don't know who Danielle is, she's a member of Oprah's Super Soul 100, she's the creator of the Heart-Centered Membership, and the author of 3 books, including The Desire Map, Firestarter Sessions, and White Hot Truth. She's always a big hit with our listeners, and the only guest that we've had on the show 5 times. Visit unmistakablecreative.com/live to learn more and sign up. And if you can't make it, don't worry. Just register and we'll send you a link to the recording after the interview. Again, that's unmistakablecreative.com/live. Even though my family's filled with amazing cooks, me being in the kitchen is basically a fire hazard waiting to happen. But I still want to eat healthy. And if you want to eat healthier and feel your best, then listen up. This is hands down one of the easiest ways. I've been drinking something called cachava as my breakfast to fuel my day. And it keeps me full for hours, and it takes less than a minute to make, which is pretty awesome. So what is it? It's been called the cleanest, most nutrient-dense meal imaginable, and I describe it as the best protein, vitamins, and everything you need to eat healthy all in one shake. It's loaded with over 70 superfoods and nutrients like maca root, chia seeds, sachaini, makai berry, acai, and coconut, and it actually tastes really good. The people who built this company started in the jungle on the side of a mountain during a health retreat, and their mission is to bring the world's best superfoods into a single, ready-to-go meal to help busy people stay healthy on the go. And Kachava is offering 10% off for the listeners of our podcast. Just go to kachava.com/creative. Again, that's Kachava, KACHAVA.com/creative for 10% off. If you like The Unmistakable Creative, there's a new podcast I want to tell you about that I think you'll really like. On the Stories of Impact podcast, they go into the science behind innovative tools that help human beings flourish. The birthright of every human being is not just to survive, but to thrive. Hear about the intersection of the science and spiritual practices that give life the deepest meaning and fulfillment. Hear from Deepak Chopra, Laurie Santos, and more. The award-winning Stories of Impacts podcast returns for its 5th season. This acclaimed podcast features award-winning veteran journalist Richard Sergey and acclaimed writer and producer Tavia Gilbert. Find them wherever you get your podcast. The Stories of Impact podcast is supported by Templeton World Charity Foundation.
Wow. So one of the things that struck me in the book was to say, you say that questioning your teachers is not a betrayal of them.
Yeah.
And yet, I see so many people who treat the words of their teachers as gospel rather than guidance. In fact, one thing that just came to memory as I was thinking about that was something that I heard Dan Kennedy say about Werner Erhard in the Landmark Forum, which I've mentioned on the show before. He said, we sell independence, but we breed dependence, which, kind of makes me cringe. But I am curious, why do you think that is? Why do so many people treat the words of their teachers as gospel rather than guidance?
Well, one reason is we're lazy. Mm-hmm. And it's so much easier to just get the answers from somebody else. Really, really is. That laziness is understandable. It's natural, and it's part of becoming stronger. You have to be weak to know your strength. So it's cool for a certain period of time. And if you want to live a full life, if you want what you say you want, because all of us in this space are given lots of lip service to apparently wanting the same things, to be free, to design our lives, conscious lifestyle design. We want to feel empowered. We want prosperity. We want to be of service to the world. Okay, well, then the formula to that is to have no other person's formula. And, what Dude was saying about est is so true in this space of so many people are preaching about they're saying the same things I'm saying right now. And walk your own path fearlessly, go where, the path of least resistance. But I got the market cornered on this theory, and there's 7 steps, and you need to eat this way, think this way, pray this way. And no one really, being questioned, having your sermon questioned is not necessarily enjoyable. It's not really welcome. And it's hard to sell your stuff if you're not standing by your stuff all the time, if you're not standing by your 10 steps. And so it's a perfect storm of dictation and dependency. And dogma comes in all forms. And this is really what I'm on my dogmatic soapbox about right now, which is, I'm really asking you to see the dogma in self-help. And I'm asking you to see the dogma in your very well-lit yoga studio that is probably full of mostly thin, mostly Caucasian, mostly middle to upper class women. And that's part of life. That's not all of life. So everything is unquestioned. Things become dogmatic, and constricted, brittle teachers, inflexible teaching is dogma. So that's my dogmatic rant on dogma. Yeah.
So, I think following that thread, I wanted to ask you about the Noam Chomsky quote about manufacturing consent through the media. And, all of us are media creators, and I can't help but wonder if we even do some degree of manufacturing consent ourselves.
Totally. Are you kidding me? It's called Instagram filters. I want you, look, I write all of my blog posts. I write from a really pure place where, I'm very blessed. I think my muse or my angels, they just shut off this part of my brain when I write, and I forget about any potential judgment coming my way. I just want to say what I want to say with the intention that it's useful. Okay. Then it's time to package it. So it's a pure birthing, and then it's hustle time. I make sure that my posts are titled in very provocative, evocative, search engine friendly ways. And I want to appear to have a solution for your pain. Now, all of those things, I can do all of that personally in integrity because I'm very clear on my motives, which are to be self-expressed, to be of service. And I do all of that by broadcasting what I think is light into the world. And I'm going to use the system to get my job done. So am I manufacturing consent? Yeah, a little bit. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I tell no lies. Let me just think about that. I don't ever literally lie about anything. I change the names of people to protect things. I guess, I don't know, is like using the lark filter in Instagram, is that a lie? Little bit. I lie a bit with my filters because they're really good for bags under your eyes. Yeah.
So, another question I wanted to ask you, you're a parent, and most of us didn't necessarily grow up with parents who are, spiritually evolved or have spent an insane amount of time doing, a lot of this self-help kind of work. And so I'm curious what you would tell to parents who are listening to this based on your own experiences.
This is how I go about, quote unquote, parenting my kid. So I have a son. He is 13. And I will just tell you before I give any parenting advice, which I'm not really, I won the lottery in terms of kids. So my kid is very easy. He's healthy. There are no challenges here. So I can't speak to my kid drives me crazy. What do I do? So I know I have it good. And my approach with him is there is so much conversation around social opinion with us and what I think is crap, what I think is truth. And I'm in his face constantly about my opinions about what's wrong with the world, what's wrong with people, and how to make it better, and what's right, and what is right action, and what is morality, and what is ethics, and what is love, and what compassion really looks like, and why so much of what we're in is just fucked up and wrong, quote unquote, with my kid. And I am not shy. I do not hide. I am not embarrassed of my spiritual belief system with him. And I've had this conversation with a number of people in sort of a speaking gig setting where, moms stand up and say, should I not talk to him about essential oils, and should I not meditate because it's a bit weird? I'm like, why would you do that? You took decades to figure out that this is what works for you, and this is the root of healthy living. Why would you round out your edges for your child? Your job is to brainwash your child with the most positivity and wellness-oriented stuff you can. So, and what I've noticed with my kid, when I'm like, come here, I'm going to give you this cool essential oil on the back of your neck, and here's why. Or we do a gratitude exercise on the way to school, or I say, listen, you need to really tune into your intuition on this. And here's where I think the fairies live in this forest. And this is just past life shit getting in your way. Sometimes he rolls his eyes. And I don't care. I stand in great pride for the belief system that I work really hard to carve out in my being. And he gets to choose. He gets to choose most steps of the way. I mean, I force a lot of, there's no meat in the house. Uh-huh. But if you want to go and have a hot dog, go ahead, dude. It's your life. Just know that is full of guts and chemicals. And, that was sprayed with pesticides. You choose. And, let's go sugar it up for your birthday. Rock out.
Yeah. How do you think about education? Looking at it from sort of the entrepreneur's lens, and then where we're headed, and what the future is going to look like.
I feel hostile about the educational system.
You and me both.
I say to my kid on a regular basis, and this is part of consciousness and keeping him awake. I say to him, let's be really clear. Your educational system is letting you down on a daily basis. And we're going to do the best that we can. So I'm not interested in the money that's required to put him into private school. And I'm not convinced that the private school system in my city is any better for him. So that's off the table. I'd rather take the money that I could pull together for private school and travel extensively with my kid and buy him the next guitar and the next organ, whatever he needs for his creativity. I have taken it upon myself. So I'm not interested in homeschooling my kid. I'm not wired that way. And he loves to be with people, and I have a career. That's not an option. So I have a book in my kitchen. My son and I have a book called, it's his name and my name. So-and-so and Mama's School of Awesomeness. And I regularly write assignments in this book for him. And the assignments range from listen to a Beatles, Blondie, and a Pink Floyd song, pull out one lyric that you really love from each song, and write a poem. That's one assignment. The other assignment is, he hasn't done this one yet. It's your job to plan an outing for us. We need to know what we're doing for 8 hours. We have $50 to spend, and we need to be able to get there on city transit. Go. And then I ask him to, explain definitions of words, make up words, and those kinds of things. And I never stopped talking at him. And we're constantly in conversation about how I think life works. And we're doing our best. But the system is failing us grossly. And I thought with my kid in kindergarten, there's a right answer, there's a wrong answer. I'm currently feeling very hostile about the admissions process for my child, where he's going to go to high school next year. Mm-hmm. It's clearly set up to make it easy for a unionized teacher system so that there isn't too much disruption and change in how the kids choose where they want to go. I was just speaking to someone yesterday. I'm like, why is it set up this way? Where it's this date and this cutoff and this school doesn't talk to that school. And she said, because these were her exact words. We want to force the child's hand to make a decision. Let's just think about this. You know what? My kid's education is not a fucking poker game. He is very clear, very enthusiastic, and he's been very mindful about where he wants to go to school. Why don't you set the system up for children to actually choose without having to get off this list if they choose this? Why don't you just expose all the dates and make this a transparent system? And it would be a little more chaotic, and you'd probably have another maybe 10 administration hours at your end, but then the child would be empowered. I could go on. Thanks for asking.
Well, I had to ask because it's something I'm always very curious about. So I want to ask you about some other thing. You looked at both healing and mental health issues in this book through multiple lenses, and this is something that I'm very curious about always because it's near and dear to me. And you actually mentioned, antidepressants and the people who try to self-help their way out of dark places. I know because I've done it. And I'm curious, what you would want someone to know about all of this, especially if they themselves are in a really dark part of their lives. And I'm curious also how you've gotten out of the ones in your own life.
Another beautiful question. I would say to someone in a dark place who is on the spiritual path, considers himself on the path, time and place for everything. So I think there is a time and place for antidepressants. To break the cycle, to change your chemistry. It is turning towards antidepressants can be such a courageous, life-affirming thing for some people to do. So I don't have any judgment around that choice in certain cases. And there's always an end. We are an overly prescribed world. We are addicted, we are blind, we are lazy, and we are fucking corrupt when it comes to the healthcare and the mental health care system. And I'm so upset when I hear, I write about this in White Hot Truth, when I hear about anybody who goes to a medical doctor, this is physiologically and biologically based system, to talk about what is essentially a psycho-spiritual issue. And they are, without any real investigation and questioning, they are prescribed brain-altering medication. This is a crime against the human spirit, the human brain, and the human body, and it needs to stop. So that's how I feel about that. And we need all of it. It's like we need psychotropics in some cases, and we need antidepressants. We need the goddess, and we need rigorous meditation, and we need devout prayer, and we need to gather in our living rooms with our friends and tell them we're in a dark place. We need to cry in a circle of other people who are human, who have been there, and who have loved us, and who will continue to love us and be on the path with us. We need to just be so vulnerable and human. That is where so much medicine is. To boil it down, my general perspective on this is it takes a village, and it takes multi-mediums and multi-dimensions to heal the whole person. And there's a time and place for everything. There's a time to knuckle down and do your mantras. And you might need to take some sleeping medication for a couple months to get through a trauma, you know? So.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, this is very near and dear to me personally because I had to get to a point where I took medication to get through it. I'm still taking the medication because, you know, I'd gotten to the point where I was so sleep deprived. And if you know anything about depression, it's this vicious cycle where sleep deprivation aggravates it. So you can't sleep because you're depressed, and you're depressed because you can't sleep. So.
Yeah, you need to break the cycle and create a new groove, and eventually, ideally, you know, lift off into different kinds of support systems.
Yeah. You know, I mean, part of the reason that I feel this conversation is important is I feel like we've had a stigma around mental health, at least in the culture that I grew up in. You know, the thing that really, I think, took me so long to get into a therapist office is, you know, in our culture, nobody tells you that you should go see a therapist. Basically, the sort of default narrative is therapy is for crazy people. And if you need it, there's something wrong with you. And we definitely would never tell anybody who's in our circle of family friends about any mental health issues. So I'm curious what you'd have to say about the sort of stigma that goes around.
I'm smiling as you say this because, you know, I'm on the other side, and it's like me and all my new age girlfriends, we think you're crazy if you don't go to therapy. I really, you know, people who will like share a problem with me, I'm like, well, what'd your therapist say? And they're like, well, I don't have a therapist. I'm like, well, you're fucking nuts. You got to go to therapy. This is basic. Yeah. And yeah, so, I mean, I grew up with a mom who was, well, she's a therapist. I mean, she's a vocational rehabilitation counselor, and she was reading Wayne Dyer. So that was part of it. And then, you know, a father who was a hockey player, like just didn't have any patience for any of this. This is part of a community, and you know, I can wax historical and philosophical about things like, you know, it used to be you would go to your shaman, you would go to you would go to the elders in your community. Like, we need those, and I just love. I tell you, I'm coming into contact more and more with just lovely men who are hetero and business oriented, and on the outside you wouldn't think that they were that holistically inclined, and in a really quiet way they are, and it's giving me so much hope because they're going for therapy, and they do have a men's circle, and they're asking their partners to go for counseling, and they're downloading the meditation apps. And I think, you know, to see holistic men are they're a critical metric in watching where society is going. And yeah, so, well, here's your hashtag. I mean, men in therapy are sexy. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned men in particular, because I think you're right. I mean, for men in particular, the idea of, you know, doing that almost feels like a sign of weakness, and we're really reluctant to do it. But I think for me, when I got in there after about 6 months, I was like, shit, I should have done this like 20 years ago. Yeah.
And, you know, part of, I think something that's helpful for everybody to keep in mind. So first of all, we need to be really clear. There is psychology-based therapy. You know, so you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And then there is more esoteric, you know, spiritually infused therapy. My choice is the merging of the two, and, you know, great in between for both. A great bridge is, you know, sort of the Jungian, and then you can move into a shamanic perspective and the esoteric stuff. But basic psychology is a lot like basic science. And I think if people who are therapy averse just kind of took that on board, it would help them make that really great step to going to get that support system. So it's like, hey, you grew up and this is your birth order. This is your gender. This is your culture. This is how your mother behaved, how your father behaved. And this was the era. We could predict that your behavior would be like this. these are the symptoms of abandonment issues. This is what happens when you grow up with someone who is narcissistic. This is what, so these are nuts and bolts things that people need to just see how we're constructed.
Wow. This has been very, very riveting and deep, as I expected it would be. So I have one last question for you, which I know I've asked you before, so it'll be interesting to see how you answer it 2 years later. What do you think it is that makes somebody or something unmistakable?
Oh, unmistakable. I was at a New Year's Eve party once, and people were in the living room in a circle dancing, and the music was really loud, and a friend who was there, your friend will take you aside and just kind of tell you who everybody is, so you're about to meet them. And he was like, and I forget this woman's name, but he was kind of yelling in my ear, and he said, and that's so-and-so. And she was dancing and just, really just letting it all out. And he said, and she becomes herself more every day. And I would say that is what unmistakable is, where you are becoming more of yourself every day.
Well, I think that makes a very poetic and beautiful end to our conversation. Where can people learn more about the book?
I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere. The center of my universe right now is Instagram. I just love that space for lots of reasons. I'm at DanielleLaporte.com, and the book itself, audio, digital, print, gold foil. I finally got my gold foil on a cover. It's like in all awesome bookstores. And Srini, you're a great interviewer. And I hope I told you that on interview number 1, how many years ago when we first met. You are really, I know you know this. I hope it's awesome to hear this from somebody else. You were so in your dharma. You were so in the flow when you interview. So anytime, brother. It's so great to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much. And for everybody listening, we will wrap the show with that. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Unmistakable Creative Podcast. While you were listening, were there any moments you found fascinating, inspiring, instructive, maybe even heartwarming? Can you think of anyone, a friend or a family member who would appreciate this moment? If so, take a second and share today's episode with that one person, because good ideas and messages are meant to be shared.
Even though my family is filled with amazing cooks, me being in the kitchen is basically a fire hazard waiting to happen. But I still want to eat healthy. And if you want to eat healthier and feel your best, then listen up. This is hands down one of the easiest ways. I've been drinking something called cachava as my breakfast to fuel my day. And it keeps me full for hours, and it takes less than a minute to make, which is pretty awesome. So what is it? It's been called the cleanest, most nutrient-dense meal imaginable. And I describe it as the best protein, vitamins, and everything you need to eat healthy all in one shake. It's loaded with over 70 superfoods and nutrients like maca root, chia seeds, sacha ini, makai berry, acai, and coconut. And it actually tastes really good. The people who built this company started in the jungle on the side of a mountain during a health retreat, and their mission is to bring the world's best superfoods into a single ready-to-go meal to help busy people stay healthy on the go. And Kachava is offering 10% off for the listeners of our podcast. Just go to kachava.com/creative. Again, that's Kachava, KACHAVA.com/creative for 10% off.
Instead of spending your day in back-to-back meetings, try a new kind of FaceTime with Loom. You can use Loom to get a quick recording of your screen and webcam explaining what the team needs to know. It uploads while you record, so it's ready to share as soon as you are done. Just copy the link and paste it in Slack, Teams, or an email, and get back to work. A 3-minute video just might replace your next 30-minute meeting. Visit Loom.com to try Loom for free. That's Loom.com to try Loom for free today. Loom, see you at work.